I think this Pesach might be the most complex Pesach of my adult life. We aren't simply telling a story about the past. We're struggling so very much with the present, and I've been hearing from many people about the ways in which they're planning to deal with the present, to integrate the present into their celebration, sometimes not celebration, of the Pesach Seder. My grandfather used to integrate the present into his Seder. He had a Seder. He was an Apikoros. He believed in God, but he hated God. So he had a Seder each year, a socialist Seder, to rail against the Holocaust, to rail against Hashem for his role in the Holocaust and the suffering the Jewish people had endured. It's understandable. It's understandable. The process of the Holocaust and then the redemption to the state of Israel very much mirrored the process of the suffering in Egypt, in which newborn babies were drowned in the river, and then the people were redeemed and brought to Israel. It resembled so much of our other suffering followed by redemption. Situations in which we have found ourselves pressed upon, and then we are rescued by God, but not without tremendous pain and suffering. It's a cycle we don't want to repeat, not on a grand scale for certain. It's a cycle I fear. I fear us being driven from this land yet again. As the prophecy says in Devarim, it's not a mandatory prophecy, but an option, that we will be redeemed, we will be brought home from the edges of heavens, suggesting that we are a spacefaring people when we finally face our final redemption. So I do not feel secure in the land, but I don't think that military might is enough to guarantee us that security. The challenges that we face, the hatred that we face, the global condemnation that we face is not a natural phenomenon. The world has horrible things going on and horrible people going on. 6 million dead in the Congo and nobody really cares. 1.5 million imprisoned in Chinese re-education camps and nobody really cares. Can you imagine what they do in those places? The assaults they conduct on young women in stadiums. We have testimony of this occurring. People forced to watch, and those people in turn being watched, and if they show emotion, if they react, then they're punished. Of men shipped off to these camps, and women left at home, and then appropriate men, Han men, brought in as replacement husbands to teach them how to behave properly. Can you imagine the level of horror? And nobody cares. The focus is on the Jewish people. The focus is on us. And that focus is not a natural focus. We are not the target because we are the Jewish people. We are the target because we are God's people, and God has made us a target. Just like he did in Egypt. Just like he did in the Shoah. And so it's a complicated Pesach, because we've suffered and we've been put upon. Iran is a country obsessed with us for reasons that don't make a whole lot of sense. They think of themselves as independent actors, but in fact, they are simply tools in the hand of Hashem, tools meant to teach us something. So when we look at the redemption that we experience, the small redemption, where all desalinization plants were not hit by missiles, where Hardov was not wiped out, enabling a flood of Hezbollah fighters over the north, where the Air Force base they struck at was not effectively struck, where 90% interception became effectively 100% interception, we certainly should look at the human hand. We certainly should admire and applaud the efforts of our scientists and our researchers and our military and our allies and even our not allies, those officially at war with us, who enabled us to stand strong. But we should also remember that our redemption was not simply in the hands of man. As my brother put it, we sat in our rooms, locked away in our rooms, like the Jewish people in their homes in Egypt so many years ago, as the missiles flew overhead, as the destroyer passed over us. So this is a complicated Pesach. As we face this Pesach, the same message has to be conveyed to us as was conveyed all those many years ago. The same message has to become a part of us so we can break the cycle of suffering and redemption. The cycle starts with Avraham. Avraham in Parshat Lech Lecha is told by God that he was brought out of Ur Kasdim, which literally means destroyers of light. He was brought out of Ur Kasdim and brought to the land of Israel. And Abraham says, how can I trust? How can I know? Abraham has doubts about God, and the reason is because of the suffering. Abraham didn't leave Ur Kasdim, his father did. His father left Ur Kasdim after his son Haran died in front of his eyes. There was suffering to enable redemption. And Avraham, even the great Avraham, has a hard time accepting it. And so God responds by saying, your descendants will become slaves in Egypt. And nobody leaves slavery. Nobody has ever left slavery without some outside hand helping them. In all of human history, with one exception, Haiti. If you look at Haiti today, you can see they haven't really left slavery. God says, I will redeem you. And then when we are redeemed, the first message delivered straight from Hashem's mouth to our ears is, Anochi Hashem Elokecha Asher Hotzetitcha Me'eretz Mitzrayim Mibeit Avadim. To be a little poetic with the translation, I am the timeless God, the Yud-Keh Vav-Keh. Your greater power, your shield, your moral force, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. I'm the Lord your God who brought you out of Persia, who brought you out of Germany, who brought you out of Ur Kasdim. That's the message we're supposed to internalize. But of course, the Jewish people don't internalize it. When it comes to the Chet HaEgel, the golden calf, they worship themselves. The earrings represent the power of community. The gold is the divine in the community. They worship themselves as a community. An idea that we are all too familiar with. So we fast forward to our modern age, and within this year, our country was talking about civil war. Civil war. Over a constitutional dispute in which, quite frankly, both sides seem to have no idea about the structure of constitutionalism. But it is not solved by the structure of constitutionalism, although I certainly would like to contribute. No, this challenge is solved by us remembering our core mission, our divine constitution, the Aseret Dibrot, the 10 Commandments, and the first one of those commandments most of all, that God brought us out of the house of bondage. And we can interpret and deal with the Aseret Dibrot in many ways. They aren't an open and shut book that says you should live your life exactly like X. They are an opportunity to build a basic common understanding, and not one that's inward looking, in which we worship unity for its own sake. That is navel gazing. It's one in which we find ourselves uplifted and delivered to a higher purpose. I went to an event for Tinuat Aseret, an organization working not to make everybody just like them, but working to spread the 10 Commandments as the fundamental constitutional mission of the Jewish people. as our escape from the cycle of suffering and redemption. I went to an event of theirs and I was very impressed because it wasn't simply a Dati event. They had people from every sector of society, not just as followers, but as leaders. It was truly impressive. So as you come to your Seder tonight, remember these two things. Number one, we have a constitution, we have a purpose, and it starts with those words. You don't have to be Dati. Just remember where we are and that our situation is not one that is entirely natural. And number two, it's Pesach. Use this time to remember how we left, why we left, and the possibilities and the wonders that Hashem has available for us, not cowering in fear in bunkers, but emerging as Hashem's people. If you'd like to learn more about Tinat Aseret, visit their website, aseret, aseret.org.il. I think they'll be worthy of your contributions because it is critically important that we bring our people together around our fundamental divine mission. May you have a deeply rewarding Pesach, and thank you for watching.